Her parents paid me to end us. They say every love story has a price. But they never tell you what happens when someone else pays it for you. I was 22 when I met Anna. We weren't supposed to meet. Not really. I was finishing my final year at a mediocre university, juggling part-time jobs and swallowing the bitter knowledge that I couldn't afford mistakes. She was incandescent. A quiet storm. The kind of girl you don't meet, you witness. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours. In a too-small coffee shop on campus, surrounded by textbooks and winter jackets, we shared a single blueberry muffin and secrets we hadn't said aloud in years. She told me about her mother's obsession with excellence, about how her father thought emotions were distractions, and how every time she painted something too raw, they asked her if she was feeling unstable again. I told her about my childhood in a 2-bedroom flat with a leaking ceiling and a mother who worked night shifts just to keep the lights on. I told her I didn't believe in fate until she walked in wearing that blue sweater with a rip near the sleeve and sat next to me like she'd done it 100 times before. She smiled like she saw something in me that even I'd forgotten existed. And for a while, maybe a few months, I believed love was stronger than circumstance. Anna had this way of looking at the world like it owed her nothing. Maybe because she'd had everything her whole life: tutors, trips abroad, private therapy, ballet since age 6. But there was a sadness in her, like she wanted to earn her place in the world instead of inheriting it. She fell in love with me fast. I think I fell faster. Late nights in the library turned into long walks through the city. She started painting me, not literally at first, but in the abstract. Her strokes were fierce, jagged, and always dark around the edges. She once said I reminded her of a cliff, still, worn, but always on the verge of crumbling into something beautiful. I asked her to explain that, and she just kissed me. I met her parents on a rainy Tuesday in November. They lived just outside the city, in a house that looked like it belonged in a magazine for people who spent money to feel important. Her father greeted me with a handshake that lingered too long. Her mother smiled, but the corners of her mouth twitched like she'd just tasted something sour. Dinner was roasted lamb, red wine I couldn't pronounce, and questions about my ambitions. "What do you plan to do after graduation?" her father asked. "I'm looking into public policy work. Something in government, maybe. I want to help people." He said. "Noble. But not very stable." Her mother chimed in, "Anna's always talked about moving abroad. You're not really tied to any country, are you?" I forced a smile. "I'm tied to wherever she is." They didn't smile back. Later that night, Anna curled up beside me in bed. "I'm sorry about them," she whispered. "They don't bother me." She looked up at me. "They don't think we're compatible." "I'm not dating them," I said. She laughed. Quietly. But her hand clutched mine like she was scared I'd disappear. "They think you'll hold me back," she whispered. I pulled her closer. "They're wrong." I said it like a promise. But even then, something inside me trembled. Weeks passed. Everything seemed fine. But something had changed, a shift so slight, I could only feel it in silence. Anna became distracted. Distant. Not cold, but guarded. Like she was afraid to speak without measuring her words first. I asked if something was wrong. She always said no. Then, one Friday afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Leo Bennett?" "Yes. This is the Westmont family office. We're representatives of the Lancaster estate. We'd like to discuss an offer with you." My stomach dropped. "What kind of offer?" "A financial one." I hung up. Anna came over that night, eyes wide, face pale. "You got the call? You knew?" She sat down. Nodded. I stood in the kitchen, unable to speak. She wrung her hands. "They approached me 2 weeks ago," she said softly. They said if I couldn't see reason, maybe you could." "What does that mean?" She met my gaze. They offered to pay you to break up with me. Silence. She added, £15,000. They said it's enough to clear your debt and then some. My heart stopped. They tried to buy me? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. That night was a blur. I remember her crying. I remember screaming, not at her, but at the world, at the injustice of being reduced to a number. I remember asking her, over and over, why she didn't stop them. I begged them to let us be, she said. They said they were protecting me. That I couldn't build a future with someone who didn't have one. I laughed, hollow. They're not protecting you. They're trying to own you. She cried harder. And then I asked the question I didn't want to ask. Do you agree with them? She hesitated. And in that moment, that single breath of hesitation, my world cracked open. I left that night without saying goodbye. The next morning, my bank account buzzed. LB Family Trust, plus £15,000.00. I stared at the screen. The betrayal wasn't just real. It was itemized. I didn't reply to her texts. Didn't take her calls. I spent the next 3 weeks in my apartment, not sleeping, not eating, just thinking. Could I take the money and run? Could I pretend I never loved her? Could I convince myself that her parents were right, that I was just a phase? And then I asked the hardest question. Had I been a fool to think love could survive a world built on status? A month later, I emailed the family office. I'm returning the money. I don't need it. I loved your daughter. That used to mean something. Then I called Anna. She answered on the first ring. I gave it back. I know. I just wanted you to know, I said. I never loved you for what you had. I know that too. I would have fought for us. She was crying. I should have fought harder, she said. But it was too late. That was the last time we spoke. I moved out of the city a month later. Got a job in a town that didn't know my name. Rented a tiny flat with leaky pipes and too much silence. But it was mine. Every night, I'd sit by the window and write down the things I wanted to forget. Her laugh. Her paintings. The feeling of her hand in mine. None of it worked. People often say that time heals everything. But they forget to mention what happens in the waiting. The slow ache. The conversations you rehearse in your head but never get to say. The sound of someone's name playing like a ghost melody through an empty room. After I returned the money, I expected closure. I thought I'd feel proud, righteous, even. But instead, I felt hollow. Like I'd buried something beautiful just to prove a point. I didn't tell my friends. Not really. I offered vague explanations when they asked about Anna. Said we grew apart. Said life happens. Nobody pressed. Because deep down, I think they knew something heavier had taken place. Grief has a sound. A silence, really. A quiet people learn not to touch. My job paid decently, policy work for a non-profit that tried to fix broken systems with broken budgets. I'd sit in fluorescent-lit meetings, discussing food insecurity while my own appetite had vanished. Some nights I'd stare at my reflection in the microwave door and think. What if I'd taken the money and walked away clean? What if I'd fought harder for her instead of just being noble? What if she loved me enough to cut them off? The questions circled like vultures. 3 months passed. One evening, I saw her name in a gallery listing. Anna Lancaster, Emerging Voices in Abstraction. My throat tightened. She was painting again. She was showing her work. Without me. I didn't go. But I did look it up online. The gallery posted one piece on their website. No title. It was red. All red. Layers of deep crimson, overlaid with fragments of what looked like shattered porcelain. Thin black lines, like barbed wire, twisted across the canvas. In the corner, a smear of blue. My color. My sweater. She had painted me. Painted us. And it looked like something on fire. That night, I almost messaged her. I even typed it out. I saw your work. It's powerful. I hope you're okay. But I didn't send it. Because I wasn't sure which part of me wanted to comfort her. And which part just wanted to be missed. 6 months later, I was called in to speak at a youth conference. Policy, resilience, reform, the usual things people wanted me to package into neat, hopeful sentences. Afterward, I walked out into the hallway to breathe. And there she was. Anna. Standing beneath a hanging banner, talking to someone in a blazer who looked too impressed with himself. She saw me. And for a moment, the world froze. She excused herself and walked over. Leo, she said. You're here. I nodded. I was speaking. I heard. You were incredible. You look, well. Her hair was shorter. Her eyes were darker. But the smile still did something violent to my chest. I didn't expect to see you here, she said softly. Me neither. Pause. I saw your exhibit, I added. The red piece. It was. I made it the week you left, she said. It felt like bleeding with a brush. I looked down. I wanted to reach out, she continued. 100 times. Why didn't you? I didn't think I had the right. I met her gaze. And for a second, it felt like nothing had changed. But everything had. We sat on a bench outside the venue. No crowd. Just wind and memory. I never spent the money, I said. I know. My mother told me. They think I'm weak, don't they? No, she said. They think you're dangerous. I laughed. That's a new one. You made me question everything I was taught to accept. That's threatening, Leo. You changed me. Silence. Then why didn't you choose me? I whispered. She didn't speak right away. My whole life, they told me love was a privilege, not a right. That I could have it only if it didn't disrupt the plan. They raised me in a house of conditions. You were unconditional. And I didn't know how to hold that without fear. I looked at her. Really looked. There were lines near her eyes now. Faint, but earned. A quietness in her that hadn't been there before. I loved you, she said. I know. I still do. I closed my eyes. The wind blew through the trees. I never stopped loving you, I replied. But I didn't reach for her hand. Because something inside me knew. Love wasn't enough anymore. We parted with a hug. It was long. Too long. The kind of hug that aches in your arms the next morning. I went home and stared at the ceiling all night. She was still there, inside me. In every song, every pause between words. But love without trust is just longing. And longing doesn't build a life. 3 days later, I received a letter. From her father. Typed. Formal. He thanked me for my discretion. Said he understood why I returned the funds. Then he wrote. Please understand our actions came from a place of love and protection. We only wanted what was best for our daughter. We still do. He enclosed a check. £25,000. As if doubling the offer somehow cleared the sin. As if money could fix what money had broken. I tore it in half. Twice. Then I sent him a photo of the pieces. It wasn't about pride. It was about reclaiming the part of me they thought they could buy. That weekend, I packed a bag and took a train to the sea. No plan. Just movement. I sat on a bench, watching waves crash like arguments against the shore. A woman sat next to me, sipping coffee. She smiled. I smiled back. She asked what I was reading. I wasn't. But I told her anyway. We talked for an hour. Nothing deep. Nothing romantic. But her voice didn't sound like Anna's. And that was the first time I felt free. It's strange, the way love lingers in your body long after it leaves your life. Like the scent of her shampoo on a sweater you haven't worn in months. Or the way you still reach for your phone when something funny happens, forgetting there's no one left to send it to. I thought I'd buried her. Not in a cruel way, not in anger, but gently, the way you bury something you once loved so much, you have to let it die carefully. But grief has its own calendar. And mine wasn't done with her. It started with a letter. A real one. Mailed. Handwritten. Ink smudged at the edges like it had been folded and unfolded a dozen times. No return address. Just my name. And her handwriting. I didn't open it at first. I left it on the kitchen counter for a day. Then 2. Then a week. Every morning, I looked at it like it might detonate. Because I knew, whatever was inside would rewrite something in me. Eventually, late on a sleepless Sunday night, I opened it. Leo. If you're reading this, I guess I finally found the courage to send it. I'm sorry. Not just for the money. For everything. I've written and rewritten this letter in my head more times than I can count. Every version sounds like an apology, and maybe that's what it should be. But more than that, I just want you to know the truth. The day my parents offered you that money, I was in the room. Not physically. But emotionally. I had already become part of the machine they built around me. I didn't stop them, because some small, scared part of me believed them. Believed that love should be earned. That partnerships should be practical. That safety matters more than soul. But then you said no. You said no to money. You said yes to dignity. And I watched the only man who had ever truly loved me walk away because he wouldn't let himself be bought. And that should have made me fight harder. But I froze. Because you made me feel something I didn't know how to live inside. I wanted to tell you this in person. I just never had the courage to look you in the eye and say, you were the best thing I ever had, and I let you go like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. You were everything. I don't expect you to respond. I don't even know if you'll ever read this. But just in case. I still love you. I think I always will. And I hope, wherever you are, you found something, or someone, that sees the value in you the way I never did when it mattered most. With love. Anna. I read it 3 times. The 4th time, I cried. Not the kind of tears that crash down like thunder, but the quiet ones. The kind that slip out when your soul finally exhales. I didn't write back. Not because I hated her. But because sometimes the most honest thing you can say, is nothing. Instead, I went outside. It was cold. Autumn in its final days. Leaves swirling like ash. Sky the color of old regrets. I walked for an hour. Past the corner shop where I used to buy her almond milk. Past the park bench where she once said, I feel safe when I'm with you. I realized I hadn't thought about that moment in months. And I wasn't sure if that was healing or forgetting. Over the next few weeks, I carried her letter in my jacket pocket. Not to romanticize it. But because it reminded me of how far I'd come. There was a time I would have run back to her the second I read it. Now. I wasn't so sure. Then one morning, I got a message from her best friend, Mara. Just 2 words, call me. My heart stopped. I dialed. She picked up immediately. She's engaged, Mara said. Silence. To someone new, she added. Not her parents' pick. A musician. Nothing fancy. Just a guy who makes her laugh. I swallowed. Is she happy? She looks happy. Pause. She mentioned you the other day. Said she hopes you're doing okay. I didn't know what to say. After the call, I went to a small bookstore downtown. Bought a journal. On the first page, I wrote, "She's gone. Not because she stopped loving me, but because sometimes love isn't enough, not when it's born in a place that never taught her how to choose herself. I forgive her. And I forgive myself. Now, I begin again." That night, I started writing again. Not just journaling. Stories. Dialogues. Pieces of myself I hadn't known how to touch in years. Anna had been my muse. But grief was my ink. And for the first time, I didn't write to get her back. I wrote to get me back. 6 months later, I published an essay. A personal one. About love, identity, and the cost of staying silent. It went viral. Emails flooded in. People telling me I'd put their pain into words. One woman wrote, "You said what I never could. He left because he thought I needed saving. I wish I could have told him I needed choosing." Life didn't suddenly become magical. I still missed her on rainy days. Still heard her laugh in old songs. Still sometimes caught myself imagining what our apartment might have looked like. But pain softened. And memory became something I could hold without shaking. One night, a new woman sat across from me in a quiet bar. Warm eyes. Honest voice. She asked me what I'd do if I had one wish. And I said, I'd wish to go back and tell my younger self that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. She smiled. I think she understood. I never saw Anna again. Not in person. But one day, I saw a painting of hers in a gallery window, untitled, again. This one wasn't red. It was green. Soft. Gentle. Like spring after a long winter. There was no blue. No black lines. Just a figure standing in a field, arms open toward the sky. Free. And that's when I knew. She was okay. And so was I. The end.